Robin, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to start with our question from yesterday.
Oh, good one.
Okay, so Robin, we were having this conversation about whether or not Nebraska can win a national title. And I did a deep dive on the NBA talent level of every team to win a national title since the expansion.
You went to 85.
I went to
all the way back
1985. And every single team has at least 2 players that were drafted in the first 2 rounds of the NBA draft. Okay. Is there 2 draftable guys on this Nebraska roster, in your opinion?
Long term, yes.
Yes.
I think there
Yeah,
are.
it doesn't have to be this year. Doesn't have to be this year.
Yeah, I think Price and Frager are in that conversation. But beyond that, no. I think probably you're looking at 2 max. So, and one of them, is like just getting started with his career and has a lot of development still to do to get to that point. But I think he has that ceiling with Braden. And I think Price is one of those guys that can have a role at the NBA. I don't know if he's a draft pick quite yet, but I think he could be, especially if he comes back for another year and continues to be one of the best shooters in the conference. I think he'll at least give himself that opportunity. But I'd say probably those guys, and then I'm not really comfortable saying anybody else is a bona fide draft pick at this point.
So, Robin, you're as close to these guys as almost anyone. When you're kind of watching what happened, and everybody kind of set it up, right? The Michigan, the Illinois, it was going to be an interesting stretch. Given how those games played out, and not necessarily the actual results, if they're different for you, did anything change about what you thought on this team?
I thought the Michigan game was about as close to a quote-unquote good loss as you're ever going to see, just considering the circumstances, the setting, the opponent, all that good stuff. But then, the Illinois game, I thought, maybe showed that there might be a little bit of a gap in terms of star power. Like you go back to that conversation about draft picks, like, Nebraska has some guys that could be draft picks, but, Illinois has that could be a top 5 pick. And like that is the difference when you talk about the elite of college basketball. Nebraska, I thought, just kind of looked a little undermanned, and especially when Rink isn't playing well, they have a lot to make up with their other guys like Price, like Frager, and down the line. And so, like, I thought that, that showed that the team that Nebraska beat in Illinois is a whole lot different than the one that they just lost to at PBA. And that from a star power standpoint, like, Nebraska, I think is limited with how they can go player for player against a team that is so stacked and playing at such a high level like Illinois right now. So like in that conversation of competing for a national championship, like, that kind of made you look things a little bit differently because, Nebraska walks such a fine line where they need their stars to be stars. And if one guy, even if it's Rink or whoever, is struggling, they have a hard time, I think, reloading and turning to the next piece the way that an Illinois can. So, again, there are circumstances around both those games that, didn't work in Nebraska's favor, but I think that you can take this week as a pretty good barometer that, I think Nebraska has the talent to compete with anybody in the league, but they need their top talent to be at their best to give themselves a chance. That's kind of my big takeaway.
Joined by that sultry, soft voice you hear, the great award-winning Robin Washut from On 3. Robin, quick question here, just to pick your brain. I got into this. It wasn't a deep dive. It was a little anecdotal, and I looked at kind of Rink's stats offensively since Big Ten play, shooting and points per game. And I don't think it's near what we talk about sometimes when we say, hey, Rink needs to do blank, and we talk about scoring. But I will say this, right? The threat and where he is and how they initiate offense, I could see how that could be attributed to points, but he gets away with doing so many other things than actually scoring. I was making the case that when he's playing well, even if it's not points, it seems like the direct beneficiary of that is Birke. What is it about those two playing and when Rink's playing at a high level that makes B2 look and seemingly play a lot better? Or do you agree with that? I don't want to assume you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the ripple effect with Rink in general is when he's playing at a high level and especially shooting at a high level, that just changes the entire dynamic of Nebraska's offense. And so I think maybe, if
It's been
anything,
so
with
long, though.
yeah, since Michigan State, really.
Yeah,
Um,
where he shot what, 60%?
Yeah, and so like even before the illness, like the shooting aspect had been a bit of a struggle for him, and that hasn't gotten much better. So that's kind of what I talk about. Like yes, Rink is still doing a lot of things to help the team win. I thought the Illinois game was the first time that he wasn't himself as a facilitator, as a rebounder, as a post defender, because even despite his shooting struggles, he was still doing all of those things well before he got sick. So like that's kind of where like Nebraska was able to get by with his shooting struggles because he was still doing so many other things to help them win. And that Illinois game, again, there's obviously variables involved there with why he was struggling. So you hope that kind of corrects with some rest over this week. But I think that with Berke in particular, to your question, is I think it's the contrast where because when Rink is shooting at a high level, Berke comes in and does some different things that when Rink is struggling with his shot, he has to try to make up for doing a lot of the same things that Berke does, and I think that contrast kind of blends together a little bit when Rink is such an offensive threat. Teams have to adjust entirely the way that they defend, and when Berke comes in, Nebraska's offense suddenly has a whole different look, and teams have to adjust once again. So I think it's the when Rink isn't shooting well, there isn't that stark of a contrast where teams have to suddenly completely flip how they defend Nebraska, and the ripple effect off every other player on the floor that happens when Rink is a legitimate 5 or 6 3-pointer threat. So that I think with Berke in particular, just the 1-2 kind of punch that those two have with the different things that they do well when Rink has to kind of fall back on a lot of the things that Berke does well, it makes Nebraska a bit more predictable offensively. But when Rink is shooting well, and again, is that kind of outlier with such an offensive threat at the 5 spot, that counter that Berke offers, I think, is a bit more impactful.
Hey, got something really good in the chat. We're a super interactive show, Robin. You know how much I like to talk to people.
Hmm.
Uh, so my guy, Coach Stokes, he says something interesting. He says Nebraska's at their best when everybody's kind of doing their part. He said their best games are like a relay race. Like each dude runs his portion of the race, and at the same point hands it off. If Nebraska's going to be what we think they can aspire to be, and you want to equate players to legs, right? First leg, second leg, third leg, anchor. Who's the guy, or maybe two, that you think needs to run their best race?
Um, I think it's Rink for sure because when he is running his best race, Nebraska's playing its best basketball. Like there's no question about it. Like they built this entire roster around him, and like everything that they do revolves around the centerpiece in number 51. So like that is the clear answer. But then you know there's also other guys. I mean, like you go to kind of down the line of their stars, and Price is certainly in that conversation. When the
Is
not
he the
just that
lead or the anchor?
he is closer to the anchor than the leader for me
Okay.
because he can just go on these spurts where he won't do much for 12 minutes and then all of a sudden he'll hit 4 straight 3-pointers. He's got that ability kind of to turn the tide, and so like I think his value, to use this analogy, is a little bit further down the race. Whereas Rink, so much just starts with him, and he's such a tone setter. And again, I go back to the ripple effect, where when Rink is doing all the things that he can do, it makes everybody around him better because it changes the entire complexion of the opponent's defense. And suddenly the back cuts are there where, Sam and Kale and those types of guys can operate with a whole lot more space. When he's not shooting well, they have to adjust, and I think it limits everyone else around him. So he's the clear one for me. Price is closer to the back, and Braden is in that conversation as well.
It's like a
He's
1-2.
Yeah, I'd probably put him at maybe a two or a three, just because the spark he provides off the bench. That was the big thing that they were missing at Michigan, and you saw just the impact that he can make with his 6 threes against Illinois. Like that, that's something that he can do that. Really, the rest of their bench, I don't think has that type of firepower. So he's certainly in that conversation. And then, from a closer standpoint, I'm gonna go. I put Jamarcus in there. Like maybe all right. So let's go Rink one.
You,
Let's
I was.
go.
If,
Yeah, Rink
Go ahead.
one,
Do
Braden
your thing.
two.
I got a question on Jamarcus and Kale, but I want to hear you're smarter at this.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Got you.
Rink
Got you.
one, Price. No, Braden two, Price three, and then
A different anchor. Ooh, this.
I'm gonna go and I'm gonna go Sam four. Because of the defense. And when all those guys I'm talking about offense. Sam is the heartbeat of everything they do defensively. And when you talk about kind of throwing down the hammer and closing out games, they do it with defense. And so like he's kind of the poster boy on that end of the floor. And for Nebraska to reach their potential, they have to be those closers on the defensive end. So I'm going to go Sam.
All right. So what if they don't have their A game, right? Because not every night you are, right? Rink's not going to get you 12 and 8 and 4. So the third guy is historically in track is the one. He or she is fast, probably not. You got to they got to run the curb. You may have to cover up. You have the anchor leg to like make up. Could I convince you if Nebraska is running a really good relay race that those guys that are running third are the Cale Jacobsons and Jamarcus Lawrences?
Jamarcus.
Like they just seem like when they're going and can hit and be contributing offensively, that relay seems a lot better.
No doubt. And Kale's certainly in that conversation, but I'd put Jamarcus ahead of him, just because he's got the ability to go for 20 and, do a lot of the things offensively. And maybe most importantly, is just the way that he's able to set the pace. When Nebraska's at their best, they're pushing the ball up floor and playing with high level tempo. And nobody does that better on the roster than Jamarcus Lawrence. So his shooting is obviously a big part of it. His scoring's a big part of it. But I think just setting the tempo offensively is as valuable of anything that he does. And so, again, you talk about ripple effect. Jamarcus is certainly in that conversation because of his ability to push the basketball, to set the pace, and how much everybody else benefits from that, from having that guy kind of taking charge and getting the ball rolling on every offensive possession. So yeah, I'd put him as in that talk for a third, and a guy that's important to keep things going when you're entering crunch time.
And outside of Price, I'd make the case, man. Jamarcus is their best tough shot taker, tough shot maker that they've got going. Like he flies way under the radar. I even like the fact when it's frenetic and the crowd's going crazy or somebody's on a run, he's got like that hard push dribble where he's thinking, okay, we like pace. All right, don't have it. Back it out. Like his temperament and role, but he still can take and make tough shots. I think Lawrence is grossly underrated.
Well, yeah, and so like he gets the ball up court and he gets the ball into the paint, which is kind of a critical component to this 5-out system that they do. Because you get the ball inside, then you spray out. Like that's kind of where it starts. So his pace allows them to get the ball into the paint like before the defense is even set, and that's when everything works the way it's supposed to work. But then, like if even the kick out shots aren't there, his mid-range game is as good as anybody on the team right now. Like his
Yeah.
ability to just pull
Out
up
of
and do kind of that 10 to 15 foot jumper, like that's an element that nobody else really brings on this roster. So again, everybody has their own part and everyone has extreme value in their own specific roles. And Jamarcus is certainly uh, right up there with value that he does with his offensive pace and some of the, like you said, the shot making that he's able to provide that not a lot of other guys, especially in that backcourt, can do.
So, Robin, in order for Nebraska to reach their ceiling here, do they have to find a way to play an eighth guy?
I just don't know who that would be, but yeah, I mean, I think going 7 is a risky proposition.
That's a
did
tough
you
prospect.
did you want to see more of Garcia, or did you think you saw you needed to with that first half with the turnovers a couple of games ago? He got buried in a hurry.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think you kind of know what guys are, and if you don't think a guy's going to help you, especially like in that Michigan game when it was about as all hands on deck as you're going to find, he played 10 minutes and didn't record a stat like that. That's hard to justify playing a guy when he just gives you zeros across the box score. Like, and so like Illinois, I mean, you go back, like he had his best game of his time as a Husker in the first meeting against Illinois. So maybe like from a matchup standpoint, you could justify playing him more, but you know, they sometimes find their core group and then just like lock in on it. And I guess that's from a game to game basis, okay, but like you worry about just kind of the long term toll that only a 7-man rotation might leave you with, especially come March. Because I mean, the last time they were in the NCAA tournament, like that team was gassed and they played like a team that was tired. And I think the whole kind of approach, especially after the start they've had, is to manage workloads and make sure guys are as fresh as possible for the postseason. But when you're only playing 7 guys in these like critical February, late January games, that kind of goes against that whole game plan. So I do think that getting to an eighth guy, even if it is 8 to 10 minutes, at least if you're getting some level of production out of that eighth guy, then that does wonders for everybody else. But I mean, Jared seems like the most likely candidate there, but um, it's hard to bank on what you're going to get from him just because of how inconsistent he's been this year.
Let me ask you something, since you know the pulse of this team so well. Do you like the 6? They need rest, obviously, and you want to get guys healthy. So this is the whole rest versus rust thing. But you're not in Piscataway until Saturday. You get 6 days. It's an early tip. But again, it's Piscataway. How are you breaking down they need the rest versus uh it's Rutgers. I don't want them sneaking up on us. It's gone from House of Horrors with Peichel to they're not very good. Like, do you like the time off
Oh,
going to Piscataway?
yeah, they needed it desperately. What they have like 3 or 4 straight 2-day, 3-day preps. Like
And then I think
that's
they go
hard.
what? They go the 7th, is it the 10th and the 14th or the 10th and the 13th? So they go 7th, 10th, 14th, Robin?
Yeah, 7, 10, 14.
Is that good? Do you like that?
Um, I mean, it's not ideal, but I guess the good news is, unlike last month, is a lot of those games are at home, so you don't have the travel outside of this Rutgers game, um, really until the LA games at the end of the month. So the schedule kind of flips is a lot more favorable just in terms of the grind and not having to be on the road as much with these short preps. But as far as this game is concerned, you do everything you need to do to win. Like you've lost 2 in a row. People are starting to kind of wonder if you're as good as everybody thought you were, and you don't want that doubt creeping into your locker room. This team, they've praised them all year about their ability to block out the noise, which is great. But it's one thing to lose to Michigan and Illinois. It's another thing to go on the road and lose to a bad Rutgers team. And I don't change my approach whatsoever. I treat Rutgers like I treat any other game that you've played this year as, it's the biggest game because it's the next game. And if you start changing your approach, that's when you start to get into a trouble. So they go in, and I think the ideal situation is, yeah, you go and play your game, you get out to a big lead on a bad Rutgers team, and then you sit your Rink and Braden or whoever it is that needs that some rest, so that you do what you're supposed to do while also getting the benefit of a lighter workload. But if you go try to sit there and say, "Oh, it's just Rutgers," man, it's high major college basketball. Winning on the road's hard. Like, that same Michigan team that beat you nearly lost to Penn State on the road, and you just kind of go down the line. Like, teams, if you take things for granted in this league, it will bite you. And so I don't expect Nebraska to change their approach, and nor do I think they should, because if they do, then they're not in a position right now where you have a lot of momentum and things going your way. You got to kind of earn your positive vibes back. And I think going on the road together with a bit of an extended break is kind of an ideal situation for them, because a lot of times you see teams kind of galvanize on these road trips. They should be as close to full strength as they've been in a while against a team that they're expected to beat. So you go there and you take care of business and do so in relatively convincing fashion, then all of a sudden you're coming back home feeling a lot better about yourself than you are right now. So you can't spoil that opportunity that Rutgers presents by just thinking you can go through the motions, and because Rutgers has struggled, it's automatically going to be an easy dub.
More surprise. I'm gonna go topical Big Ten. The fact that Buzz and those Terrapins can't keep games within 15 points in the conference, or that Iowa has found a way to put themselves dab smack in the thick of things into being that team. And after losing guys like Dix and Freeman, McCollum, he hit the ground running. Bigger surprise for you, trajectory of Iowa or the plummet of Maryland?
Probably more the plummet of Maryland, just because it's Maryland and like they shouldn't be that bad. And they got
But
Buzz
they can't
Williams,
even
who's an
keep games
established coach.
close.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, they're not just bad, like they're getting housed, and they look like a team that's like already kind of cashed it in this year. With Iowa, I mean, they have one of the best players in all of college basketball in Bennett Sturt. So like you knew that they were going to be competitive. And I think now that they've got their guy, but other pieces are starting to kind of figure it out around them a little bit. So like that's not as surprising to me. When you have a bona fide national star, more often than not, you're going to have a chance. But with Maryland's, like, I mean, the amount of resources that program has, and the caliber of coach that they have, and the recruiting base that they have, like, there's no reason they should be as bad as they are. So from a surprise standpoint, I'm going Maryland.
Robin, I'll get you out of here on this. And we've been asking a lot of our basketball guests this, so I'll steal DB's question. Slot the top 5 teams in the Big Ten right now in order.
Oh boy. All right, I'm going Illinois 1. I'm going Michigan 2. Yeah, Michigan 2. Um, then it kind of gets a little questionable. When Purdue is playing up to Purdue's standard, they're
That
tough.
includes lawyers shooting it well. Finally,
Yes, that's kind of the X factor. I mean, he just went off for 30 the other night. So like, when he's good, that changes so much for him, because then they've got kind of a triple threat there. I'll go Purdue 3. I'll go Nebraska 4. How far did you want me to go? To 4?
Just 5.
Yeah, and then Michigan State 5.
All right. Can I ask one more?
Yeah, if you want to.
Thanks, Robin. So if you're kind of you're playing the long game in the conference, and you've got to pick some guys coming from out of the rear view mirror, you taking Iowa, Wisconsin, or UCLA?
I think I would probably lean more towards Wisconsin, just because I think they have the best depth.
They
And
are flying way
yeah,
under the
and
radar.
so like I mean, Sturts obviously is as good as there is, but I just question what else is around him. Like, they just need him to be so good every game. And when he is, they're really tough. But I just, what happens when he has a game, which really hasn't happened yet, where he's, you know, 2 of 12 from the field or something like that? Like, who else on that team can really pick up the slack against a top level opponent? So Wisconsin has shown they can do it. I mean, they went and beat Michigan. Like, that's as impressive of a win as there is this season. And I think they have the depth and the firepower to, of that trio, make the most noise, considering where they were earlier in the season.
It's crazy. The last year and a half, and I think people thought it was just Tonjes last year, and Greg Gard kind of turning him loose. But no, like Wisconsin has figured out how to play offense, and I don't know if we don't realize they're 8-3 in the conference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like
again, they've got some juice to them right now, and that offensively they're dangerous, especially when they get 2, 3, 4 guys all shooting at a high clip. Like that's a tough team to match up with.
That's Robin Washut, Husker Online. Great stuff. As always, Robin, we appreciate the time. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Robin.
Sounds good, guys. See you later.
That is Robin Washut from Husker Online. Good stuff.